Welcome to Dad Esquire, the podcast for lawyer dads who are navigating the courtroom, the office, and the chaos of fatherhood. I'm your host, Matthew Korn, a practicing attorney and dad of four. At Dad Esquire, we tackle the unique challenges of balancing life as a lawyer dad. From work-life hacks to parenting wins and fails, I'm here to share stories, tips, and tools to help you thrive in both worlds. So grab your coffee, take a break from the billable hours, and let's spend some time focusing on being the best lawyer and dad you can be. It's time to dive in. This is Dad Esquire. All right, welcome everybody. This is the July 2025 edition of Lawyer Dad of the Month, and I'm super excited this month to welcome and to congratulate our Lawyer Dad of the Month, Zack Anstett. I'm going to let him talk to you about his story. It's a really cool story, so I'm like I said, super excited. Thank you so much, Zack, for joining us. Let's just jump right in. Just give us just a brief introduction of who you are, your family, your legal career, whichever order you want.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. Very excited to be here. Long-time listener, first-time caller. But my name is Zack Anstett. I'm an employment attorney here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I work for a law firm, Parker Poe, out of our Raleigh office. And so I work with businesses, schools, municipalities, really employers, just help navigate stuff to deal with people and their workforce. The cooler side of me, or what really, what maybe I'm thinking about or daydreaming about is my family, which is so I'm married since 2017. So whatever the math is on that, how many years, and then we have three kids. Isabel, who will be 5 in September, or September, she'll be 5 in October. Roman, who will be 3 in September, and then we have Emery, who just joined us in January. So 3 kids, all under 5 right now, and we're having a good time.
My wife's favorite question whenever she meets people is your engagement story. But how'd you meet your wife? If you have a fun engagement story you want to share, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I met Tara when I was in law school. So she's also a lawyer. We met. It was when for our non-lawyers listening, when you go to law school, you get assigned to sections, and so you'll be like section 1, section 2, section 3, and you kind of do all of your first year classes with that section. I saw in my property class. This girl who wasn't in my section, but for some reason she was in my property class, and I knew that the law school at Campbell has a Campbell in Raleigh has a very robust like flex program. So I thought, oh, it's just somebody doing the flex program, and so I saw her, and that was kind of my first like visual of her, and then I started seeing her around and around the law school. But when we first met, really was playing flag football, intramural flag football with the law school. We were playing in the championship, and of course her team won, which is really irrelevant because now we're married and I'm the winner. But I caught the ball, I remember, and I turned as I was tucking the ball away, and I like hit her, and she's like a super tiny person, so she went like flying, but she's also a super prideful person, and so she bounced right back up and didn't think anything of it. I like to say I swept her off her feet. She says, no, you just, you take things too seriously. No, I took your breath away. All the dad jokes that you could throw in there. But then I asked her out to coffee, and we started getting to know each other. And about like 6 or 7 months later, we were engaged, and here we are. I got married in law school, not at the law school, but during my 3rd year, and here we are, 3 kids, 7 or 8 years later, and whipping around the Honda Odyssey around Raleigh, North Carolina.
That's awesome. And you're in Raleigh. I'm from Rochester, New York originally, so I have to ask, do you go to Wegmans at all?
So Wegmans is a little chaotic, and that's coming from a dad of 3 young kids. The parking lot is crazy. I think it's still too much in its like hype phase where people are really excited about it, but it's like going to Costco on a Sunday or Saturday morning. So I've been like once or twice, but you'll usually find us at the Harris Teeter or a Whole Foods if the bonus payment came through and we can afford it.
We're not sponsored by Wegmans on this podcast. Although that would
Not
be
yet.
awesome. I do love Wegmans, and they're building one in Charlotte. they're building one in Charlotte. I think it opens in like January 2026. And I told my wife, I was like, it's probably not worth a weekly trip, but we're probably gonna be there like once a month. And it's about an hour and a half drive, but
Yeah.
once a month. We're just gonna find reasons to be in Charlotte more often. So
Are you gonna find yourself at the ribbon cutting?
oh, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. I've just grown up around it, and I had a lot of odd jobs. I fueled airplanes at Rochester Airport for 3 summers during college, and I got to meet Danny Wegman, and so I'm a super fan. The hype in my mind, the hype will never go away. You're always going to find that experience, but.
Did you
Um,
meet Danny Wegman fueling airplanes?
yeah, he had one of their corporate jets was in our
Of
hangar, so
course.
but he would come and they would fly down when they opened stores in Virginia. At the time, I think they're opening in Virginia, and so he'd fly some of the managers down to see the new stores, and yeah, so like I said, we could do a podcast episode about all the random jobs I had before I became a lawyer, but that'll be,
Yeah.
that'll be
Next
fine.
time.
Um, well, that is awesome. So your wife is a lawyer too, and I do want to make a quick plug for Mothers Esquire. So I created this Dad Esquire community, Dad Esque in January, but there's been a community out there for um, lawyer moms for since 2013. I think they were founded. So just as a quick plug, because I can't recall any of the other lawyer dad months that had a spouse that was also an attorney and a parent.
Yeah.
So
It made it a little bit easier when we had our, I had heard that dating in law school, and understandably so, can be really challenging, but it was a little bit easier for us because our date nights, we just order, local pizza and get it to the law school. We'd be studying, working until, 8, 9 o'clock at night, hanging out. And then that was, it was cool to see our grades only got better as we were dating, because we just spent so much time at the law school together. It was, yeah, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that we have a few members who are like law school dads and dad-esque, and like that is an incredible. We're going to interview one in a month or two when he's done taking the bar exam. But
Yeah.
I have so much respect for people that had kids and did law school at the same time because that we had kids that I was probably 3, 4 years out of law school before we had our first. So just an incredible thing, but. You said it's easier. Is it still easier? Like my wife got a master's in communications, but is not a lawyer. Is it still easier? Do you all find yourself like when you have discussions, we won't call them arguments, but if you have
Yeah.
discussions and you're both lawyers, is that truly easier?
So I think a benefit to the type of work that I do is, it's I've heard people call employment law like family law for businesses, and so it can have a little bit of this drama side, and then I have a litigation practice, and so I get a lot of my like competitive litigation, adversarial, like combativeness. I can get all that out at work, and I think being married to another lawyer is she understands one kind of how my brain works with like, yeah, and I'm a very simple person, so it's hard for me to do more than one thing at once, and so she can understand that really well, and she knows how to communicate to me so that way, a lot of those are avoided. And then also with a lot of those discussions, and also with just kind of my litigation practice, I'm not looking to argue, and with 3 young kids, or Matthew, I think you have 4. There's not really a lot of time for that, right? You're on this boat, you're driving it together, and the boat's not going to move unless you're working together. And so it's kind of like that forced cooperation, and then that just hopefully blossoms a stronger, even better relationship.
Awesome. That's really good to hear. All right, so I want to ask you, what's one thing about being a dad that surprised you, and what's one thing about being a lawyer that surprised you?
Yeah. So I'll take those in reverse order. One thing about being a lawyer is, like one of my favorite jobs growing up, I was a waiter. I grew up in Maryland, and I was a waiter at a crab house. And it was so much fun. I wore khaki shorts to work. I had this like bright orange t-shirt, I would, alternate between my dark blue t-shirt, and it was just great. and I was there when I was there. And then when I wasn't, I didn't have my tables texting me saying, "Hey, what's the special tonight?" Or, "Hey, how are the prices? Is it busy?" So that was in some ways, a lot easier because, like I said, I'm a simple person. It's easy for me to just when I'm here, I'm working. I'm a waiter, and I can be the best waiter that I can be. That's really what I just need to focus on. And what surprised me, maybe more about being a lawyer, which has taken some adjustment and some work here, which is it's not your traditional, especially with young kids, it's not your traditional 9 to 5. It's sometimes before that, before the kids go to school. Sometimes, oftentimes it's after that, right? If I'm leaving the office, say at 4:30 to get home, help with dinner, bath time, bedtime, you're logging back on. And for somebody who is, very siloed, compartmentalized in their thinking, it can be hard for me to shift my brain from dad brain, to husband brain, to lawyer brain, and making sure. So that was something that, early on in my career, I had to be very intentional about. Okay, on the drive home from work, you're switching it. You're using that as your transition time. It's time to be the best dad husband that you can be. That's your time. Put everything else aside. Put your phone's gonna be away. Dad husband. Everything else can wait. And when I'm on my way to work, same thing. Okay, let's focus. Though when my wife calls, even if it's just to say hello, which usually happens once or twice a day, when my wife calls, you pick up that phone. But okay, going to work. Let's focus. I always have my to-do list. I know what needs to be done that day, and I know what are my bonus points. Where, hey, if you get done, get this done, that's great. You have to tackle these items, and so that compartmentalization, shifting your brain and your focus, going from thing to thing, that was probably one of the early on challenges, and continues to be a challenge as I go in. And then the second question, which was the first question, which was what was one thing about fatherhood that really surprised me? Um, so I think I romanticized fatherhood before, but I had and I have an awesome dad, who, middle class, grew up corporate America, right? But he was the baseball coach, and wasn't a lawyer, and so he was very available and ready, and then so I had this idea in my mind that, like, baby comes and there'll just be like a switch, like a light switch that'll just go off, and I'm the dad now, and like I'll have all these feelings, and I'll have all these things, and for our eldest, for Isabel, that didn't really happen immediately. I still, she came. She wasn't a surprise. I knew for about 9 months or so that she was coming, but she came, and it felt very just like something else has now, like, been added to our life, and it wasn't like, wow, I'm enthralled, or I have this deep, like, dad fatherly instinct that actually came for me a little bit later. And I don't know if that's normal for a lot of dads, but it was something that, like, I really needed time to step into and transition from the birth date to probably a few weeks, a few months before I really felt, and I felt like I was developing a connection with her. And then with baby number two and baby number three, I think that time period definitely shortened, because I was in this groove already. But for me, that transition period, it was hard. It was hard for me early on.
Yeah, we we discussion we had in one of our, two times a month, 2 times a month Zoom meetings in the Dadass community for the people that are listening. And in a recent one, we were just talking, and one of our members had his first baby, and we were just talking about some of the challenges with that. And I said, for me at least, I kind of felt, we have four now, and I kind of felt helpless. Not, maybe not helpless is not the right word, but I just didn't feel like I could do as much during the first year. My wife nursed our first three that were biological, and so she did a lot of that stuff. And I feel like I kind of hit my stride as a dad at like a year and a half. And that's when, like, they start interacting more. And maybe it's just I'm not a baby person, but and like having that discussion, this guy, he was, what was cool about it is he was like that. Just like I'm glad we're talking about this because you kind of feel like as a dad, like if I'm not immediately having that connection, is something wrong here? And I don't think that's true. I just think, it can be harder. Like your wife or your wife has carried this baby around for 9 months in her body. You didn't have that same connection that whole time. So you were prepared, you knew he was coming, but in a different way.
Yeah, there's a biological change, at least when I'm talking with Tara, my wife, about it. She gave me a lot of grace because that was something that I talked with her about too. It was like, I feel like I should be feeling something different. And she was like, hey, there was a big biological change in me that
Yeah,
I'm kind of wired for this. Give yourself time to step into this role. And that's really just, what we did was we just gave it time. And you're right. The post 1 year, I think like that 8 month to 1 year is like has been the more challenging part because you see them they're starting to walk and crawl and move, but they don't understand safety and and like dangerous like things and so they're like mobile and they're eating everything that they shouldn't be eating and so but once you like hit that year mark like it's and every phase is fun but yeah I'm with you.
I have this distinct memory with our first of like, I think MJ was like 6 months old, and I got home from work, and my wife was like, "You need to play with him," and I was like, what are we supposed to do? And you can tell we just moved into our new house, so I'm still decorating, but I have a few records displayed behind me. I have a much larger collection that's still in boxes, but I was like, oh, we'll listen to music together. And so we would listen to the Doobie Brothers, and his first favorite song was listen to the music because he could do the
Mm,
whoa, whoa, whoa part even very young. And we would just sit there and bounce along to the music. And I just was
that's
like,
it.
this is my way to connect with him. And I am proud to say at like 3 or 4, he was able to change records, pick songs on a record, which I'm not sure even like some younger adults these days know how to do. So I was very proud of that. But it's just for me, it just kicked in a little bit later. Um, well, this is cool. So this month and every month in Deadass we have kind of a theme. This month's theme for July is work-life integration, and just finding harmony rather than just balance. Like there's
Mm,
no way. I don't think I like you. I'm a management side employment lawyer at a large law firm in Columbia, and I there's no way to like balance the hours, right? Like it just necessarily you're going to spend more hours working, then your kids are going to be awake and spending time with you. And so I don't think there's a way to balance it, but integrating it or finding that harmony and finding that balance is important, and something we're going to be focused on this month. But one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you today and it was to share some of your story, and you do a great job on LinkedIn. If anybody's not connected with Zach on LinkedIn, definitely follow Zach. He's got some every time you post, I'm like, these are great posts. Just the way you're so open about just balancing, but finding this like balance of I want to be a good lawyer, but I also my priority is being a good dad first. But if you could, one of the other things that you talk about on LinkedIn is your was your brain tumor. So if you could tell us a little bit about that journey, and then we'll chat about that for a while because I just think it's
yeah.
such an interesting part of your story, and you're balancing not just law and dad, but also this other huge thing that you're balancing. So
Yeah, let me take a sip of my coffee.
hey,
We dropped that. So okay, yeah. So let me take a step back. So a little bit over a year ago, I was diagnosed with what the emergency room doctor called a sizable mass on my brain. And let me even take a further step back before we got to the emergency room. Over the past year or so before that date, I had noticed something in my vision. We had a young daughter, and you know this, Matthew, right? You sit, you read books, and I noticed that I really wasn't able to see a lot of the words on the pages anymore. Things would become blurry, or there'd be like these black spots over the letters, and I wouldn't be able to see the things. And so you try to screen it, or you try to like move it forward and back, and that progressively got worse. So much so, if you have like a Word doc open on your computer and you see in the bottom right-hand screen the zoom that you could do, it's 100%. Or some, people with great eyes, they go, oh, like 80% or whatever it is. My screen had gotten to the point where it was up to like 300, 400% magnified because I just couldn't see. And it was trying to figure out what was going on. And in the meantime, I'd spoken with my primary care provider and I said, hey, I can't see that letters are like disappearing. If I look at them, they go away. I can really only see out of my peripheral. I don't understand what's going on. She sent me to an optometrist because that's, I guess, the first place that you start. So optometrist, they do that eye test, like better, worse, better, worse. And for me, it was, I can't see. Like it's just, okay, blurry, worse, and then not blurry, worse, and then okay, I can't see anything over here. So that just wasn't. So then I got sent to another optometrist who did the same tests, and they tried to give me glasses. The glasses wouldn't work because it wasn't an eye issue, but we later learned it was a brain issue. And so eventually I made my way through the medical system, and went to a doctor called a neuro-ophthalmologist, which is neuro brain ophthalmology eye, and so it's like a brain eye doctor and how they communicate. And he was looking at my eyes, doing testing, and my eyes were really healthy. And he didn't know what was going on, and so he put in a referral for a different type of neuro ophthalmologist. And this is over the period of like months, over probably a year, where my eyes are also progressively getting worse. I can't see. And I'm trying to balance exactly what you said, Matthew, which is this was so I have actually Roman, who's probably about like a year old at this point, Isabel, who's probably about 2 or 3 years old at this point. The work that I already have going on, trying to figure out what's going on with my eyes, why I can't see, and feeling frustrated because I felt like I wasn't being seen, right? To use an eye thing, I feel like I was just going through the motions of a very large machine that I didn't have much control over. All the while, so then come up for my annual physical and go back to my primary care provider. She runs blood work. Everything's normal from the standard physical blood work that they do. And I have my next neuro ophthalmology specialist appointment coming up in a week. But the day after my physical, I had the worst headache that I'd ever had. It was like overwhelming. It felt like knives were coming out from the inside of my brain, like into like my cranium, my skull. And classic dad move, right? If you have a cold, it puts you out on your butt for like a week. But if you have like you have a brain tumor, I remember telling Tara, like, we're getting the kids ready for bed, and I have this, I'm like, hey, I'll just take a Tylenol and go to bed. And her words were something to the effect of, you could be having a stroke. I'm not going to let you widow me. You need to go to the hospital. And like, who wants to go to the hospital? Like, that's going to suck. Like, it is not going to be fun. And I don't want to sit in a waiting room unless you're having chest pain. They don't take you back for like hours. And so, and I remember it, I like this whole story so vividly. Tara's dad, who was also going through some health stuff, and he had like a very important surgery the next day. And so we didn't know if I had like COVID or if I was sick. So he comes, he picks me up, he's wearing a mask. He takes me because I don't want to get him sick with whatever I have. Asterisk footnote here, brain tumors aren't contagious, so which is fine now. So he's fine. But he picks me up in his car, drives me to the emergency room. He checks me in, exactly what I expected, which is go sit on the chair, wait. And I'm like, okay, do you have an ETA? We're lawyers, we like to plan. And the receptionist, she's like, no, like we don't give out like, this isn't a take a ticket and here's your meat, deli counter. So I'm like, okay, great. So I remember literally sitting, like, just leaning my.
Did you
So,
did,
sorry, what'd you say?
did you have your laptop billing while you were sitting there?
That's so funny. So I told Tara, I actually did bring my laptop, because I figured I can get some work done in the emergency room. I wasn't able to get anything done, but that's so funny. Yeah, I did bring my laptop. I brought my charger. I had my briefcase. to the emergency room right before my brain tumor diagnosis. But I remember having my life, and I was just sitting my head up against the glass window, and like I wasn't like sobbing, like "ooh, I'm in," but like tears were just like uncontrollable, like just coming down my face. I was in so much pain. My parents, and they lived about 30 minutes away. They ended up driving in just to wait with me. Tara's dad could go home, rest up before his surgery the next day. And so now my parents are waiting with me, and we finally get called back. And like I can't, like it is just debilitating. My head is down, like I can't function. And they're doing their like pre take back to check on you, like check up, and they're asking me questions. And just like tears are just like dripping on the ground. And they're asking me like how I'm feeling, and I'm explaining, trying the best that I can. At this point, also, the side of my face had gone numb. And it felt like I had like a mouthful of cavities. I had never had a cavity, but I imagine like it's just like your teeth feel like they're exploding. So face is numb, mouth full of cavities, splitting headache, can't see. Like I'm a walking mess. And so the the head RN, the charge nurse, she's kind of looking at me while this other person is checking me in. I think they thought I was probably having a stroke. So then that kind of alerts some people, which is great. So then they say, we're not going to send him back to the waiting room. Come back. We're going to get you a room, which is great. Take me back to the room. And then the ER doctor, he comes in, he asks me some questions. Asks me about migraines, because I guess what I'm describing is maybe similar to a migraine. He gives me some pain meds to help manage the pain. And then he's getting ready to just send me home. And that being it. So we're updating Tara. It's like 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. Updating Tara, she says, like in a very loving way, like, don't you effing leave without getting a head, or basically get a CAT scan, right? Is what her recommendation was. And so we asked the doctor, hey, would it be worth it just to get some sort of imaging done? And the overworked, busy, tired ER doctor, thankfully, thank God, said, yeah, let's do it. That no harm. So we do that, go in for a CT scan. And they do the imaging, send us back to the waiting room, which is great. It's in the hospital waiting rooms are freezing. So I remember having like a blanket on me, just looking like very sickly and just like, for me, waiting in the waiting room. It's like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. And I realized that things weren't great, if I hadn't realized it yet, when the person that was sitting next to me had also gotten a CT scan. And I remembered seeing them because they were behind me. So they went after me, but they got discharged before me. And so I remember, and I saw that and I thought, hey, I should be discharged before him. Why do I have to stay here? Something happened. So I go up to the receptionist again, the receptionist I talked to earlier. Or no, actually what happened was my mom went up. And she asked like if there's, she's from Jersey, so she's not afraid to like ask the questions that, somebody else might be afraid to ask. So she's, pressing the receptionist, what's going on? And the receptionist told my mom, oh, they're preparing to admit him, which means they're checking me in. And so she comes back and I guess trying to protect me, like she says, oh, they said it would just be a few more minutes. And she doesn't share that information with me yet, probably doesn't know how to share it, all the while she's frantically texting my wife, like, what is going on? And so they bring us back, and the ER doctor comes in, same doctor from earlier. And, we're sitting, or before that. So I really still don't know what's going on. They bring us back to the room, and one of the nurses, or the CNAs, she comes in with those like the hospital robes, and she says, okay, here, put this on. And I still don't know what's going on. I'm in like my sweatpants and my t-shirt. Like I want to go. I have a meeting tomorrow morning at work at like 10 a.m. And it's like we can't do this. Like one of our clients they're doing layoffs, right? We gotta go take care of that. And so she comes in, she says, put this on. And I said, why am I putting this on? She said, oh, well, you're being admitted. They're going to keep you overnight. And I said, what's like, what's going on? Like, why am I being admitted? Why am I being kept overnight? Like, what's happening? Like, I was like, hey, I don't want to be disrespectful. Like, could I talk to like a doctor about like what's going on? I haven't talked to anyone yet. I don't know what's going on. Um, and so then she's like, yeah, she's probably annoyed at me. I was a little annoyed too. I didn't really know what was going on. And so the doctor comes in and and it's always bad when there's just like a lot of signs that things weren't looking good. And he says, here, let me find a chair. And so I was like, oh gosh, the doctor's pulling up a chair. This isn't going to be good. And he makes sure to get my dad a chair too. And I was like, this really isn't good. And so he sits down and he says, yeah, I don't know quite how to say this, but there's a sizable mass on your brain. And and those words were really, really hard to hear. Um, it, and so I kind of forget a little bit about what he said after that, um, because that's those we found a sizable mass on your brain. I was dissecting every single word that he had said. Sizable means big, not small. That's probably not good. It's on my brain, which also isn't great. I much would have preferred to have this on my leg or a toe or a foot or a hand. It's on my brain. That doesn't sound good. And he's going and he's explaining about next steps and what we need to do and how he's already talked to a neurosurgeon and an oncologist at the kind of the parent like hospital system where we can get specialists and we'll need to start treatment and we're going to try to find you a bed over there. And he's just going through all of this. And you, once I kind of sit in that for a minute, my thought immediately goes to, my sleeping 3-year-old daughter at home, my sleeping 1-year-old son, in his crib, my wife who is waiting for me to call to tell her that it was just a headache or a detached retina or something other than uh, they found something on my brain. Um, and so so I was upset. And there wasn't a lot of joy in that room. There's a lot of questions and a lot of fear. And so the first thing that I did though, because I wanted to make sure that Tara kind of kept up to date on what was happening. I called my mother-in-law, and she is someone who's like she's amazing like in every sort of way. Like she is strong, she is like wicked smart, she is kind and empathetic. And she's my wife's family's Iranian, and so my mother-in-law was born in Iran, and there's just a strength I think that comes from an Iranian woman. Especially she fled, her family left during the Iranian Revolution, and I needed her help to help me figure out how do I deliver this news to Tara who's waiting at home. And so Tara's mom was my first call, and we kind of talked through this, and I shared the limited information that I had. Of course, I'm trying to downplay it. I'm like, hey, I don't think this is a big deal, but here's what I know so far. And so then so then I called Tara and I called a neighbor to kind of go sit at the house while we had while Tara came, just in case one of the kids woke up, it would be a familiar face. And so and I'm happy to talk more about like where I am now and like the treatment journey, but that was really what started and kind of me sending emails out to the team at like 1 o'clock in the morning why I might not be at work the next day, and kind of how that went. But that was really what started all of this. And yeah, and so I just talked a lot, which lawyers have a terrible habit of doing. But yeah.
I just appreciate you sharing it. I can see that, you just described it in such great detail. I can see that and feel that fear and anxiety you must have had. How did you break the news to Tara?
So I called Tara, and it was so my second call was actually my neighbor, who is she's a rock star. Like she is like sweet, like amazing. She has four kids herself, and so I called. Her name is Laura, and I said, "Hey, Laura, I'm at the hospital. I just got a challenging diagnosis, and we think that there's some sort of mass on my brain." And so I wanted to like work through it. Like I wanted to honor her and I didn't just want to drop that bomb. So we had like a conversation for a few minutes. But I said, but I'm really going to need your help. Is there any way, I haven't told Tara yet, is there any way that you could just be waiting outside the door for her, for support, but also she's probably going to want to come to the hospital if there's any way, that you could just sit with the house just while she comes here. And of course she was, yes, whatever you need, 100%. I'm already putting on my shoes and walking across the street to your guys' house. And so then I called Tara, and trying to be strong because I didn't want her. Of course, I don't want her to worry, right? I don't want her to be concerned. Um, I call her and I say, hey, you know, we don't really know too much about what's going on. They think they found something like kind of in my head that might have been the cause of the headaches and the eye stuff. Um, I'm really trying to like downplay it. There's got to do some more testing, but we're still trying to figure stuff out. And I said, oh, by the way, Laura's outside the front door, and then she said that she would, if you wanted to come down to the hospital. Of course, Tara wanted to come down to the hospital. If you wanted to come down, she'd be there, and she can sit at the house and sit with the kids, and but I think it'd be good, and you can ask some questions, and we can try to figure out what's going on and what next steps might look like. And so Tara, and I distinctly remember she has her mother's strength. She didn't. I've never seen her cry like once over this. She was always, and was always, is always, and like I have no doubt will continue to be the strongest person like I've ever met. Like she is, she in that moment, and she's told me this, she knew that it's like when you're in a pilot, it's like when you're on an airplane. If you don't see the flight attendants freaking out, you can be calm because, like it's okay. And you can trust that it's going to be okay. She was that for me. And she continues to be that solid, just strong person for me. So, and that allows me to have confidence in that, but that also allows me to feel like I have the freedom to feel and process however I need to feel and process. And and her doing that, because my first concern was I need to make sure she's okay. I need to make sure that she's not upset or she's gonna freak out. I need to make sure, and that's why I was trying to cushion the blow. But she thought the same thing about me, and she thought I need to make sure he's okay, so I need to be strong. So we're both trying to just be strong for each other, and so she comes to the hospital. I later learned, she later told me that she called her uncle, and she immediately started crying, and he kind of gave her like the also classic like Iranian, like he was like, you need to be strong for him. If you go in there crying, he's gonna think that he's gonna die. So you need to be strong for him. And she's like, okay. And so she was, and then she made it to the hospital, and we got an MRI, and unfortunately it confirmed what the CT scan showed, and yeah, and then that really started our journey on this.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear how supportive your wife was and how she was a rock for you during that time. And I love how you said you had the freedom to kind of process it like that. That part I can't imagine. Like even hearing you describe it, it's hard to even put myself in those shoes. So Um, but man, thank you for sharing it. Because I'm sure there are people out there that have been in that and know, that's what I think is the best part about community is that we can share these stories and somebody else who's going through that right now can hear it and know that there's light out there for it. Tell me a little bit about um, I've got some questions about how this has impacted work and stuff, but just so we can close the loop on like the story itself, just tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about how long ago was that? Like a year and a half ago?
So that was probably, if I remember correctly, it was probably March 2024. So about a year and 3 months, year four. Yeah. A little bit over a year ago.
So what's happened? Fast forward, what's happened between then and now, just in terms of the treatment?
Yeah. So it's, so the good news is there's, and let me take a step back. So in that night, I made the commitment. I hate needles, Matthew. Like I hate needles. I hate like being poked and I hate strep tests. Like don't put anything inside of me unless it's like cooked with some garlic and onion. I I don't want it. But I made a commitment to myself. I said, Zach, there's going to be a lot of unknown. There's going to be a lot of things that are also out of your control. Uh, whatever you can do to make your specialist, your doctor, your surgeon, your endocrinologist, whatever you can do to make your doctors' lives easier, whatever you have in your control, do that. And I've carried that with me for the past almost year and a half, where, if a doctor says, hey, this might be something, do you want to do the blood work now or do you want to hold off? It's let's do the blood work now. It's okay. It might make sense for us to do an MRI. Let's do the MRI, which by the way, Matthew, I don't know if you've ever done like a head MRI. Awful, hate it. It's, they put this like football helmet thing on your head that's like an inch away from your face, these two heavy plastic pillows that hold your head still and you can't move for for almost an hour. And this like big tornado thing is whizzing all terrible. Don't recommend it. But I made that commitment that whatever is within your control, mind over matter, you're gonna do it. To make your treatment easier, to make your treatment have a better chance at success. And so I took that commitment, and it's kind of great. Going back to my wife being Iranian. When you're Iranian, you're one of three things. You're a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. And so we didn't need lawyers, we didn't need engineers, but we had a few family friends that were doctors. And so immediately, like, little Tehran jumps into action and they start trying to figure out, okay, who do we have that might be able to help with this? And by the grace of God, we had a radiologist, family friend, and then we also had a cardiologist who knew a neurosurgeon, family friend. And so we have the radiologist like looking at my images, making recommendations about who we need to contact, who we need to call, and then we have we have that plan set up. I'm going to leave the emergency room. We're going to make this, the trek. And by this time it's like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. So, it's not like we're going to sleep overnight. And so we were there overnight, but we have the plan. We're going to leave this morning, and we're headed to this other emergency room to kind of start the process in that emergency room system. And so while we're on the way to that emergency room, my cell phone rings, and I'm with Tara, and and I'm smiling because I remember, it, there's so much unknown. All we know is there's a Lyme, it was a Lyme size brain tumor. So, go to, Harris Teeter, or go to Wegmans, find a Lyme, and then just put that in your brain. That's how large it was, and that's why my eyes were dying because they were being suffocated, which is a different story. But my cell phone rings, and pick up the phone. Hello. Hey, is this Zach? Yes. Hey, this is Doctor So and So. Are you friends with, are you friends with, Mehdi was the gentleman's name. Are you friends with this person? I hear you might have had a hard emergency room visit. I want to let you know that it sounds like I may be able to help you. And immediately I just start like crying. And so what I learned is this doc, he's a neurosurgeon. He's a specialist at one of the top hospitals here. And he says, I'm supposed to be off. I'm supposed to be off today, but if you can come to my office, give me a few hours to get dressed. It's the mornings, and give me a few hours to get dressed. Give me a few hours to kind of coordinate with my assistant. If you can come in, I can see you. I can, if you can get me your images, I can take a look at them. I think we may be able to help you. Uh, and just what a relief that. So I'm not going to the. He said you can go to the emergency room where I think they'll just send you because he was part of that system. He says I think they'll just send you to me and save yourself the few hours of the waiting room, the mess that the ER doctor. And so that he puts that into motion. He gets me the appointment. We find out that he is the exact type of person for this, and that really starts we have the diagnosis now, that starts the treatment plan. And so then we learn a few good things, which is it is a very treatable tumor. It is 99% chance that it's benign. Hard to test because you kind of got to go in and you got to like move brain and then you got to take a piece, but it's like 99. So it's most likely a benign tumor. It also learned that it's one of the largest that they've ever seen. So, Matthew and I were talking a little bit about being competitive. So like, that's kind of cool, that it's one of the largest that they've ever seen. But it's treatable. And so we start putting out plans and treatment plans. I was very pleased to hear that chemo and radiation were like a plan C. So we have like plan A's, plan B's, which is great because radiation and chemo on the brain. I wasn't too hopeful for that, or I wasn't too excited for that. And so we start treating it, and we start a plan which involves it's a dopamine agonist, and it's a pill that I take that is designed to shrink the tumor. There's a hormone, basically the high level medical summary is there's a hormone, my pituitary gland is creating this hormone in way too much, excess, way too much of it. And so what it does is, if you can imagine, you have a little purse, and all the excess of that hormone just goes in the purse. Purse gets bigger and bigger, bigger, bigger. That's the tumor, right? So my body doesn't have anything to do with that hormone. So it says like, let's just keep putting it in the purse. The medicine that they give me basically communicates to my pituitary gland, we don't need that much of that hormone. So then the tumor starts to shrink. Where I am about a year and a half later, my tumor has shrunk by about 30%, which is great. Treatment hasn't always been fun. And I know Matthew and I talked about that, a couple weeks ago with just it hasn't been, there have been some challenges just like with my health and things that just a side effect. But like we said, like the commitment I made to myself the night in the ER, this is the medicine that's going to save my life. So it's if I'm getting pretty sick for 30 days out of the year, that's okay, because it's either that or you're dead, or you can't see. So another thing that has been on my mind, pun intended, I guess, about a brain tumor. But another thing is, choose your hard, right? So not being able to see, that's hard. Taking a medicine that sometimes makes you really sick is hard. But choose your hard, because one of these things is going to make you better. And not doing anything could leave you dead or blind. But where I am now, about a year and a half later, my tumor has shrunk by about 30%. My numbers are almost within, my hormone numbers are almost within the normal range for what should be expected of a male my age. And we're continuing the treatment going forward. There are some hard things that I've learned about like the specific and the risks and stuff, and kind of what can happen if we don't get it down to size fast enough. But that's kind of not within my control, and so just kind of taking what is within my control, trying to make it as easy as possible for my doctors, and we're just continuing to march forward with that.
Uh, I was thinking about if I'm doing the math, I would have found out you
Oh, sorry, hold on. You cut in a little bit out, and I don't know if that was
were
me or
sorry. Did you find out you were? pregnant with that. When was that? It feels like that was like shortly after your diagnosis, if I'm doing math correctly.
Yeah, so funny. So the hormone that you're calling me out on this, the hormone that was being created in excess is called prolactin. It's the breastfeeding hormone. And the so you can kind of laugh, my wife does. She makes a running joke. She says, "Huh, the doctor," and the doctor never said this, but she's like, "Oh, the doctor says it's a miracle he didn't have any boobies," or like, that we switch and back and forth between breastfeeding our kids. You kind of have to have, if you're not laughing, you're crying. What that does though is, because it is the breastfeeding hormone, the higher the number, which we talked about, I had some of the highest numbers ever, so like shout out me and the biggest tumor ever. The higher the number, the lower things like testosterone, testes, stimulating like sperm production, and so I wasn't supposed to be able to have like kids. And so you're right, we did. And so so about like 4 months or 5 months after the diagnosis, we found out that Tara was surprisingly pregnant, which is like a great, like, we're welcoming Emery to the world. That also means that treatment is going well, that the fact that Tara can, that I could still get Tara pregnant and that we could still do that. Those were two like very positive things, as signs from the treatment. And yeah, so your math was exactly correct. So about like 4 or 5 months after treatment started, we found out that we were expecting our third.
And but it sounds like I was just curious, like, was that tough for you? Were you still in the state that you were like, I don't know what's going to happen? Or were you like, it sounds like it gave you some optimism about treatment's working, gave you some joy. I just like how, like, that just, it's a lot of big things happening at once in your
It
life.
it it is a lot of big things. So it was mixed. I remember when we found out about Emory, it was mixed, mixed feelings. We were pretty certain that we wanted a third. Um, eh, and Roman was going to be a little bit over two. Like when Roman was born, Isabel was just under two. So having two under two, that was a lot. Um, and we did have this treatment going on. Uh, but it was like it was such a, like, we want this and we don't want the brain tumor to be holding our family back. um it's because it's something, the treatment as we understood it then and as we understand it now is going to be a long-term treatment. And there are, like, I have a, like, when I talked about some of the risks, one of the risks I have is based on the size of it. I have a 1 in 6 chance. The neurosurgeon that I'm working with calls it a dice roll. I have a dice roll that essentially the tumor itself could have a stroke at any minute. Blood supply gets cut off, and then the tumor, in a way to try to save itself, it expands rapidly, or it just starts to shrink and then it expands rapidly like a balloon. And so I have a 1 in 6 chance of that happening at any time. And I either make it and I have emergency brain surgery, or I die. That's something that I have to live with every single day until we're able to get the tumor down to a manageable size. But we can't operate on it now because it's wrapped around my carotid arteries inside my brain. And so it's just, we're waiting for, and we're hoping that that dice roll doesn't happen, that dice roll doesn't come, and that we're able to get it down to a manageable size where we can either go in, do brain surgery, get it out, or we just continue the treatment and we know that that dice roll risk becomes not a 1 in 6 chance, but maybe a 1 in 7, and then a 1 in 8, and then 1 in 9, 1 in 10, 1 in 11. And then the risk and the likelihood of that happening gets lower and lower. And so we didn't want to put our life on pause for this. And we wanted to make sure that we could keep living. We went to Disney World, about like 6 or 8 months or something after the diagnosis. We took the kids, because it's something else that this has taught me is, when you're forced to face your own mortality in ways that I think are different, and unique than pre-diagnosis, where like, oh yeah, I'm gonna die probably when I'm in my 90s or 80s, I'll eat my vegetables and I'll be healthy and I'll see my great grandkid. Like, but when you're forced to face your own mortality, that any day I could literally die, or when it was even more in my face, which is that night in the ER, I thought I was going to die, and I thought that this was going to be it. And my daughter is going to have to grow up without a father. My son is going to have to grow up without a father. If she's married, I'm not going to be there to walk. I'm not going to see her get married, walk her down the aisle. I'm not going to. My wife, how is she going to manage these two kids? I think I told her, I like, we had a conversation. I was like, hey, it's okay. Like, I don't want you to think I'll ever be mad at you. I want you to get remarried. Like, I had that like conversation with her because I want to make sure that like, how can me dying have as little of an impact on my family as possible? And so that was what I was thinking about very early on. But then that shifted my thinking to how can my living have as great of an impact as possible on my family? And it's been a complete shift in my paradigm with my thinking.
Uh, that's so good. Um, I want to ask, you said you had meetings that morning. I want to know a little bit about like how is
Yeah.
treatment diagnosis? I know you were you're finishing up like you broke up your parental leave, which is awesome that you have that ability to do that too. In finishing that up now, but like tell me a little bit about like how his diagnosis and treatment just changed how you do your job.
Yeah. So I was like my second or third thought after I was like, family and with treatment and all that was I have a meeting with like a very senior partner like the next morning and with like a very good client and they want to do layoffs and like how am I gonna like I'm supposed to be on that meeting. And so I email our practice, like some of the key attorneys that I'm actively working with in our practice group. I have a screenshot of like the you could see the tumor and like I circle it just to make sure that they didn't think I was like lying or like, I don't know, when it's like 2 a.m.
Only lawyers will understand these comments that you're saying right now. So I
Yeah, but
get
like you go through like and that was much more like on me than anything that they had ever communicated to
sure.
me. Like I'm just like paranoid that like,
You got
I'm
exhibit A, you've got the tumor circled. This is exhibit
I do,
A.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I emailed, there's probably like seven or so, eight partners. I copied my legal assistant on it. And I'm like, hey guys, I'm currently in the emergency room. I just gotta I don't have a lot of information yet, but they found a sizable mass on my brain. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it into work tomorrow. And this was like Thursday morning at like 2 a.m. And I was like, I probably won't be there Friday. We're trying to figure things out. I'm so sorry. I think I might have a meeting with a couple of you tomorrow. I probably won't be on that. But please let me know if I can do anything, like if you have any questions or like I ended with like some like stupid attorney line, like please let me know if I can help with anything or give me a
I'll be
call.
back Monday. I'll see you Monday.
Yeah, yeah. And like and I will say I was back on Monday, which like everybody was like stupidly shocked, but you get it. It's like okay, I started treatment, so like now we can like everything goes back to normal and like I'm back on Monday. And so and I even texted like I'm like freaking out. I'm like I'm in the hospital. Like they just found like this mass on my brain. Like, what do I do? And it's like and so of course, like one of my mentor partners, he like doesn't text me back until the morning. And he's like, relax, like take care of yourself. Everything's fine. And that was every single email that I got. And it was, hey, I know this doctor, like, let me know if you want me to, put you, or, hey, take all the time you need. Seriously, like, don't worry about this. And then my legal assistant's like, hey, I'll put up an out of office message for you. Like, don't even like sweat about it. It's like immediately everybody was just jumping in and how can we just isolate and like incubate and Zach's that way. He can take this time. And there was no conversation about like, are you using PTO or this is going to be an unpaid leave of absence or like there's none of that. It was just let's just take this stuff from Zack, take the time that he needs, and how can we support you? And you know, I got some very encouraging, and I'm pretty open about my faith at my law firm, and we have a great prayer group there, and one of the partners that I had a call with at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. whenever it was that morning, he said that he would, and he regularly shared with me throughout the early months of my treatment that he and his personal trainer would be praying for me, and my name was written up on their prayer board or on their workout board, and that whatever they needed, or whatever I needed from a support standpoint, that they were there. And so it was that was a huge sigh of relief, because like we talked about my compartmentalization, I could just close that box, and I could be done with that, at least for that Thursday and that Friday morning, and I could really focus on what was really the more pressing issue.
Yeah. So is it, and I know we talked about there's been some times where it's been tougher with the treatment. How do you manage that? Um, Working, parenting, doing all the things.
Yeah, so it's the dopamine agonist, which is what I'm on. So it's like essentially like a hormone type therapy. It's not intravenous; it's just a pill. So like I take, but it can kind of it can be rough sometimes as we're figuring out dosage. And that's probably been the hardest thing, is when I get really sick. Um, I'll be, like throwing up. I won't be able to eat anything. I like one of the worst bouts of it that I had was probably over a period of like 10 days, or 10 or 12 days. I lost like 20 pounds. I wasn't able to eat. Like I eat like chicken bone broth with like a little bit of rice in it, and it immediately comes back up like a few minutes later, and I could barely have water, and so that is really hard. I remember, but also like, and I push myself way too much. We're in the service industry. We're probably a lot of people pleasers. We like, I always wanted to be, this was kind of another one of my mantras. Like, I didn't want anybody to have the conversation with me about, like I had that in the back of my mind. They're going to put you on like you're employment lawyers, right? Oh, put them on an unpaid leave of absence, and like there's a responsibility on me, and I felt this of, you are still the breadwinner for your family. You are still the provider for your family financially. Brain tumor or not, you can't blow it. And so I was in the office, like dry heaving some days, throwing up in the bathroom, that nobody at my firm knew about. Because I never wanted it to be a question in their mind. Could Zack handle this? I never wanted it to be a question in their mind of, is Zack going to be able to stay at the level that he was at before this diagnosis? And so I was, you know, sick or not, and even when I'm not sick, I have my regular. I get blood work probably once a month or once every 5 weeks or so, because you have to monitor my levels of that, the prolactin, the hormone. I get MRIs multiple times a year. I have my follow-ups with my specialist where we're meeting in person. Yeah, and so whether I'm going to Durham or Chapel Hill, or my specialist in Raleigh to get the MRI, it's all that stuff takes time. And on top of already with ballet class, and wanting to be present, and needing to be present, because that's what my kids deserve, is a present father, and the commitment that I made to my employer to be the best attorney ever. It's all of those competing interests. Yeah, I've had to really learn about boundary setting, and being intentional with what my time looks like.
Yeah. Um, I might know the answer to this question, but lawyers, learn you're not supposed to ask questions you don't know the answer to. So, but who or what has been your greatest source of support during the
Mm.
past year and a half?
Yeah, so the easy answer is Tara. I mean, it's she has been she's with me every single day. She's not taking girls trips. She's not, going away for the weekend. She's not, like, she has done um more than she should have done, and it's you know like I couldn't have asked for a better person uh to if this was going to happen. I couldn't have asked for a better person to be there with me through this and in this, whether it's like a small example is like I hate being sick. I look at it as like, probably the lawyer type A Enneagram 3 personality in me is, it's so inefficient to be sick. Like, this just it's useless, right? Like it just slows you down. Um, one of my most recent kind of bouts of like being sick, like she just said, "Hey, just go lay in bed, like go take a nap, go sleep." Because when I get sick, it's like body aches, like it's just like a really, really bad flu. Um, and I woke up, it was like 4 hours later. And it's like just the space that she creates in our home is it's peaceful. It's a kind space that in this in my treatment, I've been able to like show up when I can, and if I'm not able to, there's no shame, there's no guilt, there's just love, and to have that, I, I I don't even know if I can even put it into words other than just like giving the examples that I give.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I want to one more question about this, and I got some. We'll do some fun questions.
Yeah,
Too, but this has been fantastic. Hearing your story. But I think, and myself included in this bucket, I think a lot of dads sometimes struggle with just these feelings of guilt that I'm not doing enough, I'm not present enough, I'm working too much, but I also feel this pull to be successful in my career, um, to provide for my family in a way, and financially, and um, just this feeling of guilt that I wish I could do more. I'm not doing enough. How have you learned to give yourself grace on that? What advice do you have to dads out there who might be dealing with personal or health crises or something else that um, could be encouraging to them?
yeah. So I I'm still learning, when you know how not to push myself too hard or too far. And so I think, you know, and so you know yourself, when, it's I don't ever want to cheat, like I don't ever want to cheat myself or cheat my family. Like, do you just not feel like getting up today? Or is it like, is this actually like, do you actually need to go like be sick? Like, so finding that and holding myself to, I think it's fine. Like I hold myself to a pretty high standard. I volunteered at my daughter's vacation Bible school a couple weeks ago. And, uh, that was one of the times that I got really sick, and I was sick at like 2 a.m. on like a Wednesday, like throwing up in the toilet and like just like dying, not literally, well maybe, I don't know, but really sick in the bathroom. And I was able to stomach a Zofran, and I was like, I'm still going to be going to vacation Bible school the next morning. um and that was also the same afternoon that I took like a 4 hour nap. But balancing, if you can, push through and be there, and know that rest is coming. That's been really like impactful for me. If I can make it through the day knowing that evening is coming when I can rest, if I can push myself, um because my motivation really is in large ways my family, and knowing what my kids deserve a dad who's present, who's available emotionally and physically. My wife deserves a husband who's present and available emotionally and physically. Um, and if I can do that, Zach, you better do that. But if you can't, it's okay. And working as a team to communicate, when you can't, or when you can't do certain things, having those conversations. Don't be afraid to have those conversations. My kids have understand really well when daddy has a tummy ache or daddy has a headache, and he's not feeling well. They have been incredibly patient, and they've probably learned that from Tara, but it, they have all been very, very supportive on the times when I've needed to take a step back.
Uh, Pushing through, knowing for us, talk about the transition you were talking about earlier, made a really good point, I thought, which was, if you consider your work day as the time you're at work, and then you have to get home, and then you need to be on for your kids. It's tough. That transition can be tough. If you consider your work days from when you go to work till after your kids go to bed, and it's all just one work day, it's just different type of work. You know that there's a time where you will have some rest after that. But that's what that brought to mind for me. It's just this idea that like you want to give your all to your job and then give your all to your kids. But so really good. All right, so I want to ask a couple fun questions before we log
These
off.
haven't been fun questions, Matthew.
These have been deep. Like this has been deep. I want to ask them. I mean, this has been awesome. It's been really really good to hear your story. But let me ask. So first, just starting out with like, what's one of your proudest moments as a dad? I like to have a
Mm.
chance for Lawyer Dad of the Month to brag a little bit about. I mean, you've already like you're volunteering at VBS, you're doing all these amazing things we've heard about. But what's one of the things you're most proud of?
So so seeing my kids, like we're very like classic millennial parents, like talk about your feelings, work through it, like all feelings are okay, some actions may not be okay kind of thing. So just like the classic, like, oh, like, yeah, anywho. But like seeing like
Gentle parenting.
yeah. But like we use a lot of that language in our home, and seeing our daughter, like who I call, she's like mini mama. She's just like little like Tara Jr. So sweet, and like Roman, he can just kind of be like, you know, he's a little crazy 2-year-old boy. But like watching her use that same gentle language with him and seeing the way that he responds, it's the like I see that like a few times a week when when she talks about like how he did something that hurt her body or made her feel a certain way, and he'll say he's sorry, and they'll hug and they'll get back to playing. Like so seeing those moments, like that, just like you just want to like squeeze them and like, oh, like give them a big hug, and that just like, that's probably some of my proudest moments, seeing those moments.
That's really cool. And it's the modeling. The modeling is so important. They're seeing you do it. So
Yeah.
it's seeing the behavior and just learning it. That's really cool. All right. So I know you said you were reading with your kid. Part of your story was about reading to your kids. What's your favorite book to read with your kids?
Mm.
You have a favorite?
So we're big into, I'll do one like fun book. Well, they're all fun. Like, but we read a lot of like Disney books. They love reading about Elsa and Anna. They love Roman is obsessed with Ariel. So, he pretends to be Flounder, and like he'll like, and then my daughter will pretend to be Ariel, and she'll need to like save him from like whatever like chaos is happening in the house. So he loves to be like Flounder, the little yellow fish. And so we love these like Disney books that we have. But there's a new book that we got. It's called Beneath. It's a really cool book that tells a story of a grandfather and a granddaughter and they're kind of walking through the woods, walking through the forest, and it's about how there may be things that you don't see on the surface, but there may be something beneath that's a little different. So they talk about a tree that looks solid, but it's hollow on the inside, and there are little animals living in there. Talks about like trees and the roots that are beneath the tree, and they see a lake that looks really calm, but there's a lot of chaos and a lot of fish underneath it. So that's been also a really impactful book that we've been reading recently.
Yeah, check that one out. I haven't. I don't think we've read that one yet, so we'll definitely check
Yeah.
that one out. one more. I've got a whole list of some good ones, but let me ask you one more.
Hey, they've all been
Um,
good. We've been having a lot of fun.
yeah, this has been great. What is the last time your kids, if this, you may not have an answer to this, but the last time your kids embarrassed you in public?
Oh gosh. I mean, when was the last time we went out in public? No, so it, it can be challenging sometimes. When they get like I love going to Target with them. Like, there's so much fun. It's a lot easier when you just take one of them. Because when you get both of them, they're very playful and they love to just play, which is great. But when they're like taking stuff off the racks or the shelves at Target, and they're like, I'm trying to put them in the cart, and then like, they like split up, and they're like one's reaching on this side for things on the shelves at Target, and then one's reaching on that. So you have to try to find your way to get like exactly in the middle of the aisle, or else one of them can reach the shelves. And so that is just like a challenge sometimes. And then I'm trying to keep track of my list of what things we actually need at Target and how did like all these 12 things end up in our cart. Uh, but that's probably been maybe one of the more embarrassing or challenging times that we've had, which is, our weekly or bi-weekly Target trips.
Yeah, we had a whole chat on that too, and like we could go out to dinner with our kids, and we are the parents that like our kids are allowed to have iPads when we go out to dinner usually because I like to enjoy my meal and I like other people in the restaurant to enjoy their meal.
You're
So
thoughtful, yeah.
you can judge me if you want. I'm like, you know what? They're gonna have a little iPad time while we're at dinner. As our boys have gotten older, we now are like, you don't get your, and they're like, well. But Madison gets her iPad, and I'm like, well, she's 2 and you're, 10. So you can
Yeah.
have a conversation with us. But it's that, you get that whether you're on a plane or in a restaurant or in a store, you get that feeling of like, oh gosh, my kid's acting out, my kid's yelling, my kid's crying. And it brings on that. But then with the discussion we had is like often like it's a lot of that's in your head. I feel like a lot of what we've talked about today, like the pressure to be at that meeting to, your pressure of your kids acting out. A lot of this stuff is in your head because like what I
Yeah.
found is like people are like, oh man, we had young kids too. You guys are doing a great job raising your kids. Your kids are, well, we've had your kids are well behaved when I'm thinking in my head, like really they're not.
Yeah.
They're running around. So
Yeah.
a lot of it I feel like is in your head and just getting comfortable with like, yes, there might be somebody that's annoyed that my kids are, Madison loves to just run around the whole restaurant. We've had to chase her like she can be a bartender someday, I think, because she likes running behind, at Buffalo Wild Wings. She ran up and ran behind the bar, and I was like, Madison, you're not allowed back there. You're two.
I love they'll put you to work, Madison. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. She would do a good job. She's awesome. But anyways, that's it's just a good like that's what I love about this community we're building is just this ability to talk about things that we can relate on that is dad's like, some of it's in our head, some of it's real stuff, some of it's how do I deal with this? And knowing that there's other people out there that are going through the same things, I think is huge. Like that the tagline for Dad Ask is now you don't have to do law or fatherhood alone. And
Mm.
that's real important to me. We have an isolating, sometimes feels like an isolating profession. We do a lot of work on our own with our door closed in our office. And being a father can feel isolating in ways too, where you feel like, hey, maybe we're the only ones going through these struggles. And so I think discussions like this, like we've had today, I hope are helpful to other dads out there that are maybe going through the same things or know somebody's going through the same things, and they can be that supportive partner who's got an associate. And I love that you have that support from the partners that were just like, dude, just take care of yourself. Like, don't worry about the meeting. And as
Yep.
a partner at a law firm. I know in the back of my head, I'm like, man, now I got to get ready for this meeting because I was stressing the associate. But like, that's the kind of reaction I have when stuff comes up with the associates I work with, and I love that you had that. But just people hearing this stuff, I think is so important. So Dude, I really appreciate your time and today and being finishing up your leave. It was a good opportunity to have a good discussion, but I appreciate you giving your time today and sharing your story. And I hope other guys who are um, going through the same thing we're going through, being dads, being lawyers, consider joining our community. It's dadesq.mn.co. And it's a free community for people to join. I just want to create a space where people can have these discussions. That we talk about all sorts of stuff. That's some of it's dad-in-law, some of it's fantasy football, some of it's other stuff. So, but thank you so much, Zach. I really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. And I'm glad to be that resource for anyone else, going through something similar or just wanted to talk. I'm glad to be that resource too.
Great, man. Thank you. And I hope, at some point in the future we can hear an update and that tumor's shrunk even more. And I just love the optimism and the drive you have. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Dad Esquire. If you found value in today's episode, leave a review and share it with other lawyer dads who could use a little extra support. For more tips, stories, and community, subscribe to our podcast and visit www.dadesq.com. If you're a lawyer dad who wants to join the community, submit your request to join today at www.dadesq.mn.co. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and on Instagram at dad_esquire for even more updates and, of course, some lawyer dad jokes. Until next time, keep crushing it at work and home. You've got this, lawyer dad.